The New Norm is brought to you by Winning at Home. I'm Steve Norman. Welcome to The New Norm. Last Sunday, I was removing some snow right after we'd had some friends over, and my wife, Kelly, came out to me, and she's like, hey, have you looked at Facebook yet? And I said, no, what's going on? And I could tell by her tone that something serious had happened. She's like, our friend Becky, who was diagnosed with breast cancer 5 years prior, had passed away. And when I think about Becky, I see like joy personified. She was a person who was just absolutely full of life. And if you've been following the podcast that we did before this one, which is called Hope Through Hard Stuff, we had Becky as a guest on that show 3 different times to talk about her journey with cancer and how her faith helped her navigate that journey. And if you're ever curious, you can go back online. Again, the podcast is called Hope Through Hard Stuff, and you can listen to those episodes at your convenience. But Becky's passing reminded me of 3 lessons that I knew intuitively, but I needed to hear again. The first one is this: life is a gift. Every day is a gift. Every moment is a gift. Every relationship is a gift. Even every conflict is a gift. When we lose somebody who's close to us, not only are we reminded of our own mortality, but we're reminded to live our lives with both gratitude and a sense of urgency. Last week, I had the opportunity to go to Becky's memorial service and was not at all surprised by the sheer number of people who were either publicly or privately paying tribute to her light, to her love, to her influence, to her generosity, to her grit, to her tenacity, to her just contagious laugh. There were so many amazing things that people said about Becky. And I'm almost certain that everybody told her while she was still with us how much they loved and appreciated her. But sometimes when I go to a memorial service and I hear people pay tribute, I'm like convicted about the number of people in my life who I need to tell that I love them, that I appreciate them, that I'm grateful for them while they're still here. And I think a lot of times we wait for these milestone moments, these cultural touchstones, whether it's someone's passing or somebody's retirement or like a decade birthday or an anniversary. And we roll out the tributes then. But it's okay to roll out the tributes on a Tuesday at 4 or on a random Sunday morning, somebody a text and tell them that you love them and that you're appreciative of them. There's a poem that I came across once called Do It Now. And they're talking about how if someone has touched your life, make sure that you let them know in real time. It says this: if he earns your praise, bestow it. If you like him, let him know it. Let the words of true encouragement be said. Do not wait till life is over and he's underneath the clover, for he cannot read his tombstone when he's dead. And that sentiment just reminds me that life is short. And because it's short, my days matter, my choices matter, my goals matter, and my words matter. And I want to make sure that I'm using my words and my relational energy to speak life and gratitude and courage into everybody that I come into contact with. And every single day that we have is an opportunity to do so. Don't miss those windows, because you're not guaranteed that you're going to get them next week or next month or next year. Life is a gift. Second lesson that I'm relearning is that despair is deadly. Pastor Timothy Keller once said that out of all the temptations in the world, despair might be the most dangerous temptation of them all. And I remember one time when Becky was on the show, she was talking about a verse that had been particularly meaningful to her. It was from the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verse 14. And this passage, if you're not familiar with it, tells the story of the people of Israel who had been enslaved in Egypt for hundreds and hundreds of years. And after the 10 plagues, God is opening up a door, an avenue for them to claim their freedom. So they're fleeing the land of their captors, and they're getting ready to go into this land that God has called their destined land, their promised land, but they're stuck against the Red Sea, this massive body of water. And for those of us who know the story, we want to tell them, like, hey, don't panic. God's going to do something miraculous and you're going to be able to flee. But they don't know that yet. And so the word that Moses gives them in the midst of their terror is, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. And that was a verse that Becky held dear. It was one that she believed. And I don't fault people who come to me and say, well, if the Lord was so committed to fighting for Becky, then why did we lose her? And that's a good question. It's a fair question. I wish I had a clean and a clear answer for it, but I don't. But I do know this, or at least I believe this at my core. Regardless of what happened with Becky's physical body, I know that on the spiritual level, God was fighting for her and was fighting against despair and fighting against darkness and pushing back against doubt with light and hope and courage and faith. I know that Becky had her hard days. In fact, on that last podcast, she and Fred talk about their 30 days of darkness. One of the things I love about them is their candor and their humility and their authenticity, their willingness to name hardship as it is when it happens. It's amazing to have people who will tell the hard, cold truth to themselves and to the people who care about them when it's unfolding. And they've done that. And there will be opportunities that people who love Becky will still have opportunity to do that. But I think that if God was fighting for Becky, and I believe that he was, one of the things that he was fighting against despair and fighting against the sense of hopelessness. So yeah, life is a gift. And yes, despair is deadly. And then finally, grief is holy. Grief is holy. I think that sometimes in the West, whether that's Europe or the United States, we see grief as an obstacle that needs to get overcome. We see it as an enemy that needs to get vanquished. But unfortunately, this view of grief is not fair and it's not biblical. In fact, 40% of the Psalms are songs where the writer is literally yelling at God. We call these Psalms of Lament. And I believe that a healthy spirituality is one that includes the full range of human emotion. And the full range of human emotion includes bright joy and deep sorrow. And again, that was one of the really beautiful pictures that came out of Becky's memorial service last week, is the chance for us to see people's eyes light up when they talked about her and the joy that she brought them, and the way that she touched their lives for the good, and then also just the weeping, the deep, deep sorrow. And I think one of the things that I'm learning is that you can hold both of those emotions in your hands at the same time. And when we're going through grief, there's no script for it. There's no roadmap for it. There's no direction for it. One of my friends, Michael Spain, said that when he lost his wife, he wished somebody had told him that grief is like being dropped into the middle of a forest without any clear direction on how to get out. Another person told me that your grief is your own. Like when you lose somebody that you love, nobody else can share your grief because your relationship with that person was unique. But she also said this, that our grief must be witnessed. Somebody else has to give testament to our grief. That they have to validate it by saying that it's true. And then one more friend, one of the therapists here says, sometimes you need to learn how to take your grief for a walk. I think that's a fascinating image. It's to say, like, it's almost as if our grief has its own personality, its own needs, its own ability to both expand and contract. And if we don't let our grief breathe, we run the risk of letting it compound and compress and then maybe explode and surface somewhere else in our life in a way that we don't want or don't expect. But there's a story in the scriptures, in Matthew chapter 2, after all of the fun parts of the Christmas story, where it says that this twisted king who is drunk on power, Herod, found out that a baby who is going to be born king of the territory that he was overseeing was expected in Bethlehem, or that had been believed to have been born in Bethlehem. And so what does he do? In total paranoia, he orders the massacre, the murder of every child under the age of 2 in that general vicinity. And the scripture says, it's actually quoting an ancient prophet, a guy by the name of Jeremiah, says that a voice is heard in Ramah, Rachel weeping and refusing to be comforted because her children are no more. And I think that when we come to Christmas, there's a lot of emphasis on joy and hope and light and beauty. And yet, in the account of the very first Christmas, God is kind and merciful enough to those of us who are grieving to tuck in a note there that says, grief is part of the Christmas story too. Tragedy is part of the Christmas story too. Heartache is part of the Christmas story too. And if you're grieving this Christmas, know that you are not alone. You're not overseen. You're not forgotten. That just as God wept with those families near the first Christmas, if there's weeping at your table this Christmas season, know that God weeps with you. And if I or we can be praying for you this season, please don't hesitate to reach out. I want you to know that even if you don't see God present with you, you are not alone. And the promise of new life at Christmas encourages us to celebrate life at every level. So thanks so much for being a part of this journey with me, and I hope that you and yours have a blessed and Merry Christmas. The New Norm is produced and distributed by Winning at Home. Winning at Home is a faith-based nonprofit committed to making individuals, couples, families, and businesses stronger through counseling and coaching. For more information, visit winningathome.com. I'm your host, Steve Norman. Thanks for listening.